Welcome, my son. Welcome to the machine. And welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, more Pink Floyd celebrating the return of a Red Bull son to the driver's seat. I am Drew Scanlon. Joining me, the BBC's own Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
Yeah, I've been doing the media circuit this week. I was talking to Rob earlier today about different European sports as well. So on a separate podcast, which I'll allow him to shout out now.
Oh, yes, Rob Zachney. How are you? And tell us about the cross-promotional podcast.
Yeah, I've had a great day. Danny came by Remap Radio to talk about sport on our sports podcast on our premium feed.
It was kind of a podcast because I'm Irish.
Podcast, yeah. And you can sign up over at remapradio.com if you're not familiar with what's going on over there. That's what sort of has become of Waypoint ever since our site was shut down and a bunch of our colleagues were fired as part of what we now know is a bunch of executives kind of looting the company as the ship goes down. So that's been a fun thing to learn this weekend, is the people who are fake crying in the meetings where you and all your buddies got laid off were going to give themselves $200,000
wow
bonuses, and it's that's a good feeling. But yeah, we had a great time talking about hurling, Tour de France, all sorts. Sorry, hurling like the sport,
yes,
not the traditional Irish sport, not like the Wayne's World. I'm gonna hurl, yeah,
got it. Well, great. I'll link that in the show notes for people to go sign up and listen. If you're new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. If you are new to Formula One itself, we've got an episode just for you. The preseason primer assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show is supported entirely by our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films. I'm going to say car documentaries and films.
Yeah, that's fair.
F1 video games, experiments with the racing series.
And we're
and
clinging
all
out of cars with our fingernails.
Yeah. If you'd like to support the show and get access to all of that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What do we have going on this month, Danny?
Yeah, we have a car adjacent movie. Logan Lucky was our patron exclusive last month, and we are soon to be recording a film review of Need for Speed, which in fairness is very much a car movie. I think I've not seen this movie, but in my head, is it about racing or is it about crime? And also, wait, now that I think about it, aren't all these street car racing movies about both racing and crime? That's kind of the thing, right? The genre.
Yeah, fundamentally, they're all about racing and crime. But I do feel like if your instincts are, is this going to be a pretender to the Fast and the Furious throne, I suspect you are correct.
Okay, I like it. Considering there was only one of these movies, I guess we'll see if it reached those lofty heights. Massive thanks to all of our incredible titled sponsors as well. Aaron Collitz, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, Alex Medina, Kikaha of the Art at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, IronStation.dev, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foot, Abdullah Al-Thani. Stunt Derby demo is available now. I think that's technically still correct, although it might be because I forgot to take it down at this stage. That's not me, that's someone else. Oh, keep your demo up after Steam Next Fest?
No, I
sure.
just am
Anyway.
do you donate yourself to the donors?
Yeah, we have. Exactly. We have promoted 2 off podcast pieces of content from the crew already, and only 5 minutes of this podcast have gone by. Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us podcast, Crimes, Bunny, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Valtar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Umberto Roca, William Rompf, Irvine Clinical Research, Lachlan the Madden Man, and Jason Kelly. Thank you all so much. We have a lot to talk about today. Oh, lordy.
We sure do, but I'd just like to throw out there that the making of Karateka just announced by Digital Eclipse coming later 2023.
I forgot to mention,
Master
congratulations. Just announced today.
While we're doing
rad.
plugs, yes.
Yeah, let's get it out there.
The hat
But
trick
you're right.
siren
We have a
goes
lot
off.
to get to. Yeah. Another fantastic qualifying at the British Grand Prix here, thanks in part to some weather. Thanks,
Yes.
Britain.
Oh my God.
At the beginning. And Magnussen's car dying near the end of Q1, bringing out the red flag, meaning we get a mad dash for laps when the session restarts. And it's one of those where it's just everybody jumping everybody, which is just, that's the best. That's what you're watching qualifying for. And it just makes me wonder,
One-shot qualify.
why can't we get one
Let's
of
do it.
those crazy sessions in Q3? They always happen in Q1 where there's 20 cars on track. Let's scramble it in Q3. But I would say Q3 was still pretty thrilling here. Final laps, Lando Norris in the McLaren sets the fastest time to take provisional pole. And there's only Verstappen yet to complete his lap, and he is down in the middle sector.
Yes.
But of course, this is 2023, so Verstappen takes pole. But check out this top three. Max Verstappen on pole, Lando Norris in second, Oscar Piastri, the other McLaren, in third. Both McLarens running their new upgrades on both cars this weekend. And it shows Zach Brown slamming high fives throughout the garage.
Have you ever seen a happier man in all your life? Lando could hear him shouting like yippee in the background of the radio and said, wow, Zach is happy. Such was his elation. Yeah, really great. It's a fairly, like, we've seen them dabble with some of the upgrades, and obviously Lando had these at the last race, but they hadn't been put on both cars. Maybe the high-speed corner factor at this circuit as well, helping them out. But really fantastic to see it. And there was, it's funny with Hamilton, we often think about Mercedes as a British or British fans supporting them. This weekend was a real McLaren love-in, and I think that was super cool to see.
Also, maybe this is just correlation, but McLaren were saying they were going to finish their new wind tunnel in June and have that stood up and calibrated. And what do you know? Their upgrades for high-speed cornering are apparently pretty mighty. So better living through engineering. I don't know. Maybe it is just the natural development arc their car has been on this year, but after a long period where they've sort of been saying that their stuff is out of date, they're struggling to execute upgrades and car concept stuff correctly. This is the first time that you've seen, in quite some time at least, that you've seen McLaren kind of do the thing and deliver a sort of comprehensive upgrade that produces results.
Yeah, and they last year, having finished so far down the field, get more wind tunnel time. So maybe that is paying dividends, as you say, Rob. But behind that top three, we've got lining up for the British Grand Prix in fourth, Charles Leclerc and his teammate Carlos Sainz in fifth. Then the two Mercedeses of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in sixth and seventh. In eighth, Alex Albon in his Williams, another team that has flirted with goodness. I was not going to say greatness, but
flirted with goodness. I love it. Put it on a t-shirt.
Fernando Alonso in ninth, Aston Martin going the opposite direction perhaps this weekend, and Pierre Gasly rounding out the top 10. Behind him, we've got Nico Hülkenberg in 11th, Lance Stroll in 12th, Esteban Ocon 13th, Logan Sargent 15th, and a name I haven't said yet, Sergio Perez once again failing to get out of Q1.
Yikes.
This time due partially, perhaps, to the fact that he was the first to set a time in that crunch period of Q1 as the track was just drying behind him. 16th, Yuki Tsunoda. Then we've got 17th, Zhou Guanyu, 18th, Nick DeVries, 19th, Kevin Magnussen, and 20th, Valtteri Bottas, who failed. He was disqualified from qualifying for failing to provide the 1.0 liter sample of fuel. And in fact, he stopped on the side of the track at the end of Q1. So maybe he had
That's what I was wondering. Did he literally run dry? Is that why he couldn't produce a fuel sample? Is because the car just stalled. Yeah, the minute I saw the next day that he'd been disqualified, I was like, oh, I wonder if that thing that's not supposed to happen happened.
Yeah, it's not a great look for De Vries either, who is basically last. The only two drivers behind him are one that got disqualified and one that didn't finish qualifying. So, not to say that Tsunoda's rocketing up the charts, but
That car sucks.
Yeah, the car's awful this year. Yeah.
Well, Danny, do you want to take us through the start?
I do. An exciting start as Lando Norris gets a great getaway. So does Verstappen, but in that sort of second phase of the gearing up, I guess he struggles a little bit. That actually allows the other McLaren to come up the inside and almost have a little go, but Lando is kind of hugging the inside of the turn, so he keeps it. And then we have Red Bull McLaren, a delicious sandwich as Verstappen is attempting to catch up with Lando and make easy work of an overtake somewhere, but it doesn't really happen, at least not in that initial lap. One of the Mercedes ends up going wide on turn 3 and rejoins.
Yeah, it was Lewis, right?
Is it Russell?
Mm-hmm.
No, it was Lewis.
Hamilton.
Oh, it was Hamilton? Okay. Great shots of Lando down the first straight, trying to break the toe behind Verstappen to try and get ahead before DRS kicks in. Wonderful to see it, fighting throughout the lap, and we got a couple of laps of good action out of that first and second battle.
It took Max a minute to reel him in. I really thought it would happen faster, just because we're so used to seeing the straight line speed of the Red Bull just tow it past anyone who does manage to get ahead of him briefly. But I think there's a couple things. I was watching Jolyon Palmer's video, and his reckoning was that Piastri actually had a very good shot at getting Max as well at the start
on the way to Stowe.
But he backed off.
Oh, sorry.
And didn't want to force the issue and risk being taken out, which I think does kind of speak to neither Norris nor Piastri really wanted to force the issue with Max at this track. And I think this is one of those things where the championship is a done deal. Nobody thinks they can seriously bring a fight to the Red Bull, but even if they could, the season that McLaren is in means that first is not necessarily the most meaningful to them. Pursuing that's not worth the risk, but bagging podium points would be hugely beneficial for where they are at in the championship. So I think it's one of those races where you really see the context of where the championship is at affecting the decisions drivers are making about how hard they want to fight this. Because when DRS is up and Max has the entire race, it sort of felt like it took a little while longer to set passes up, and that might be because Silverstone is tough to recharge the battery on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so little hard braking where you get a lot of recovery. So it felt like you saw a lot of passes take several laps to set up, where guys would sort of hover in DRS range or just outside of it when that 1 second area before they close the deal. But once Max was set up, Norris was not going to fight for that lead. He'd done his bit at the start. He put a shot across the bows, but what was it? Lap
5,
3,
I think.
lap 4?
5. Yeah.
5. Yeah, he does not. He stays to the outside when Max goes under him and doesn't contest it at all.
Yeah, and what's surprising, though, is that the McLarens stay with Verstappen and manage to pull a gap out from Leclerc, who's in fourth. Meanwhile, though, the other Red Bull of Perez working his way through the field, passing Hülkenberg for 13th on lap 5. Although Hülkenberg does make contact with Perez's rear right,
that's a shame.
damaging his front wing. So
has to pit.
He has to pit for that. And while McLaren is showing some surprise pace in this race, Aston Martin, as we said, showing the opposite. Hamilton getting by Alonso for 7th on lap 7 with DRS. And on lap 18, I've always wondered about this, and it's always been if I ever imagine myself as a driver, it gives me anxiety when I imagine trying to remember what the plan is. And Carlos Sainz says that Ferrari tells him that they're going with plan B, and he says, "What was plan B? I forgot.
Oh my
I
God.
mixed them." Very relatable.
You didn't do what I might have done, which is like, yep, totally sounds good, Chief.
Anything
Wait,
you
why
say.
are you pitting? Also up there in the mix is Russell, having started on the soft tire, unlike most of the others around him on mediums. He gets by Sainz on the opening lap for 5th and then pits on lap 29, rejoining in 9th. Quickly reaches the other Ferrari of Leclerc. Rob, do you want to jump in here?
Like, I just thought this was such an interesting thing. Like, this tire strategy thing that unfolds across this race. It gets derailed by an incident like immediately after this.
Yes.
But everyone, like, Ferrari was coming in. They were trying to make their mediums last to the hard window opening, and then they were going to go on to those. And the first people on the hards were not having amazing results with those. And in part, like, for the first third half of this race, it was really cloudy and cool. You started to see some sun breaking through in the second half, which might affect things later. But the fact that Russell softs appeared to wear about as well as the mediums people were on, I really did feel like, wow, he's made those last incredibly long, and by going from the soft to the mediums, he is going to just wreck house in the second half of this race, because the hards didn't appear to have the juice, as it were. I really thought the way it unfolded was curtains for Ferrari as far as like their position relative to Russell, and it was just a matter of, you know, once Russell was up to speed, him reeling them in. I forget who was still ahead of him. Was it Leclerc?
Yes.
Just reeling him in and getting it done. That all got mooted by a safety car. But the entire like prediction for how the tires were going to go appeared to be wrong at the start, but then also kind of seemed to be wrong based on what we'd seen like throughout the entire race. The hards didn't perform like you'd expect in the final stages of the race, which we'll get to.
Yeah, so on lap 31, Russell gets DRS and Leclerc defends into turn 6, but Russell cuts back, swings around the outside of the next corner, which is left field, getting around Leclerc as they go through that long right-hander. Pretty great move. Lap 33, then as you said, Rob, we cut to the stationary Haas of Kevin Magnussen that quickly bursts into flames.
Sure does.
Albeit briefly. But does bring out a virtual safety car followed by a safety car.
Yes,
and lots of people dive for the pits.
And critically, that's the double safety car nature of this is kind of what caught out a lot of people as well. Just want to say, wretched. This weekend couldn't have ended quickly enough for Haas. Just an absolute. Nothing. If they, as Martin Brundle likes to say, if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all. Maybe good to have everything bad happen in one weekend like this, but especially tough for Hulkenberg, who's been doing so well. That's just a pain in the ass when that type of stuff happens. The virtual safety car to safety car transition is what ultimately sort of ends up deciding that final podium place as well, as I think it's during the virtual safety car we see Piastri jump in. And the issue with a virtual safety car, as we talked about last week, is that they can end whenever. So you sort of have to be, quick on the draw when it comes to a virtual safety car, because you don't want to be too late in the virtual safety car, because like we had last week, I think it was Sainz pitted late in the window and ended up getting caught out a little bit. The other thing that can happen is that it turns into a full safety car, and then suddenly the advantage that you had
much slower
it's worse. It's then if you had waited to get the safety car, and that's ultimately what happens with that second round of pits.
This is the part where my jaw was on the floor, because Hamilton had just missed the pit.
Yes,
the
he had
pit entry when the VSC came out, and it was like, oh god, there was his chance, because he'd already driven a lovely recovery drive. He'd sort of clawed back a lot of the ground he'd lost, but it was like, oh, this would have really been the thing to seal it in his favor. And the weird thing is, by going around that one more time under VSC conditions and then getting the pit under safety car, it was like, well, bye, Oscar. You had a great race, son, and it really almost went your way.
Yeah, because Piastri pits earlier in the race than Hamilton, but Hamilton, because he pits during a safety car and not a virtual safety car, gets a cheaper, faster pit stop, and jumps Piastri into third place.
But also, he comes out behind Norris on. So, like, Hamilton's done what we would have expected, which is he goes onto the softs. It's the dying stage of the race. We've seen that Russell could drive the soft all day long on a full tank of gas. So it seems like the soft is just going to slay in this dying stage of the race.
Used softs, no less.
Yeah, that's true. There were a lot of folks who had scrubbed tires. I think Alonso came in with no fresh sets whatsoever, as they were sort of struggling with their tires throughout quali. But Lando came out on hards.
Yeah,
he had the choice, and he went in and he came out on hards, which hadn't performed well. And I would have bet everything that they had just handed the race to Ferrari. For that second position, like they had the
Mercedes
they're talking
or
to
Ferrari?
Zach Brown. Sorry, what?
Mercedes or
To
Ferrari?
Mercedes, yes.
Okay.
They were talking to Zach Brown on the pit wall, and he said they were really uncertain about it. So they just had the debate whether it was softer to be on softs or hards. I thought that they had just pulled a Ferrari and sent Lando out there to die.
And you could argue from what was going on when they restarted, I think it was lap 39, that was the case, because Hamilton was all over the back of Norris. Norris had to defend.
Well, Norris knew it was coming.
Well, totally. And maybe it's an element, again, of trying to get those hards to get a bit more heat into them. Takes a little bit longer to activate them. Maybe the track is slightly warmer. Like Rob was saying earlier, the cloud cover never really left. There was pockets of heat, but just maybe rubbering in a little bit. Maybe that aided
McLaren's
it.
tire wear profile has been different this year too, right? They have had
It was different from everyone else this
They've
weekend.
had the opposite issue where like wear sucks for them.
Right. Getting it up to
So,
speed yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
The race will prove that it maybe wasn't the best choice, but it was a good choice, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of the more exciting moments in the race because, DRS doesn't turn on until one lap after the safety car. So it is a fist fight. Norris trying to break Hamilton's toe on the straight. Hamilton trying to use the grip of his soft tires around the outside of corners. Norris trying to keep him behind, and it lasts for multiple laps. Hamilton trying the outside of left field, then the inside on the following lap. In the end, though, Norris does manage to get those hard tires fired up and hangs on to second place. I thought this was fantastic.
Terrific. And it's not easy to get your tires up to speed in general. It's also harder. It's especially hard to get your tires up to speed when you're also fighting for position, because you have to accommodate that with your entering into corners where you are on the track as well. So I think it was a masterful drive by both of them, but Lando really showed his racecraft, I think, in there, and sort of earned the position that he had.
I also do kind of wonder, you could tell the softs were done very, very fast. And
That's true too.
Lando in the post-race said he didn't know why he was on hards. Maybe it should have been softs. But by the end of that battle, I kind of thought, oh shit, they might have actually really called this right, because the hards held together and the softs, it's one thing for Russell to do a pace control thing for half of a race, but what Hamilton, that dogfight that he was in with Norris, the tires were spent just so quickly. The window was open, vanishingly small. Obviously, the Mercedes is draggy and also just could not keep pace with Lando, but I was impressed with how clean the racing was too. I think we're very used to seeing lots of borderline moves of, is he sort of dodging around to cut off the line. Norris really isn't doing that. He's taking really clean, tidy lines that just don't leave Hamilton good options. He's not running him out. He's just leaving Hamilton kind of sketchy lines that Hamilton didn't want to try to force the issue with.
And if we want to compare and contrast a soft versus hard battle, you need only look back at Carlos Sainz languishing in, what was it, 7th or 8th or something, and Sergio Perez on the softs, gobbling him up on a straight,
Yeah, lap 44.
Well, that was you heard the radio call between Sainz and the Ferrari pit wall too, right? Where they were both like, "What do you want to do?" And nobody seemed to have a strong feeling about anything.
Plan B?
And yeah, Sainz is I don't know, should pit, stay out, I don't know. And Ferrari's well, I don't. It was they kind of ended up just again sacrificial lambing him, but also it was not one of those cases where anyone seemed to have a lot of conviction about what the right thing to do was. But I think the results do kind of speak to Sainz was not in a position to be on those tires.
No, and it goes from bad to worse because Perez gets by him for 8th, and then Sainz either like loses momentum or maybe gets on the marbles, falls victim to Albon, who shoots through on the straight into Stowe, and then his teammate Leclerc, who gets by him through the complex of turn 3 and 4.
Like 2 corners later. Like it was in the same sequence, basically. He got, and we're not used to seeing that. A car get overtaken twice, unless they got a blue flag getting waved.
Yeah. Gasly tries it on Sainz on the next lap, and while he does pass Sainz retakes the place a few corners later. But unfortunately for Gasly, injury is added to insult when on lap 46, Stroll just cuts the turn 2 corner, smashes into Pierre Gasly, and breaks his suspension, taking him out of the race.
They had a torrid race.
Yes.
Who, Gasly or...
Gasly and Stroll kept running afoul of each other, right? Because Stroll had that one where he went around the outside of Gasly and just ran off the track and passed him.
Yeah.
And like the stewards, I guess, let it go.
Both of these. Stroll doesn't get penalized for anything.
And like it was one of those things where when I saw it when I saw it live at first, I thought that Stroll had been run out wide by Gasly. I was like, that's a fair no call with how they've been calling these things. And then I saw the in-car, and it was like, oh, there is zero chance he was making that corner. Like there was just no way he was going to have the turn in. And then this fatal incident with Gasly where he breaks his suspension was less forgivable. Like that was just bad. It was a bad position. It was bad choices by Stroll, and then just a really clumsy hell with him coming back online move. It was not his finest hour, and I understand why Gasly's kind of shocked at how this was not handled.
It was a real road rage. You cut me off, I'll cut you off kind of thing.
Well, I think I have to side with Gasly here because he's got this quote here from race fans. It's black and white if you're on the track or off the track. We certainly learned that in Austria. Off the racetrack is gaining an advantage. 5-second penalty or give the position back. I got done 15 seconds last weekend for, like his phrasing here, for track limits. Now I lose a position to someone getting off the track and nothing happens. So I'm just extremely confused with what's going on at the moment.
Fair. Yeah.
I think he's right. I don't really know what to tell him. Also on lap 46, Perez is still passing people. This time Alonso for 6th place after getting DRS on the back straight. But as the cars come across the finish line, Max Verstappen wins an 11th race for Red Bull in a row, which I believe matches a McLaren record. I heard the commentators say, not sure if that is the record, but that's a lot of races in a row. The first Red Bull track win at Silverstone since 2012.
Yeah, wild.
Which I was surprised by. Lando Norris comes home in 2nd, fending off Lewis Hamilton, who rounds out the podium places. Just missing out is Oscar Piastri. Then George Russell in 5th. Sergio Perez comes home 6th after starting 15th. Fernando Alonso finishes in 7th. Did he start in 7th? No, he started 9th. Okay. Alex Albon. He started 8th. He finishes 8th on the 800th race for Williams. Another great defensive drive from him, although I don't feel like I saw him very much on the TV. He keeps the Ferraris at bay in 9th, Leclerc, and 10th, Sainz. And then outside the points-paying positions, Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas, Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu in 15th, Yuki Tsunoda, Nick DeVries, and then the DNFs of Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, and Esteban Ocon, who went out with a hydraulic leak. I'm sorry. I take back everything that I said.
Oh.
Stroll did receive a 5-second penalty for causing a collision.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah. But I really don't understand the non-call on going off track. in passing. Maybe they felt like I don't know.
Maybe they were just too jazzed to see Lando Norris crossing in second and Zach Brown doing a little belly dance in the pit. What a good time. Oscar Piastri not so kind of happy and not so happy.
Does he show emotion? I'm not sure.
He shows more emotion than Nick DeVries does, I feel like. Although we'll get to that.
Well, we should get to it right now, Danny.
Okay.
Because unless anyone has anything else to say about the British Grand Prix, because boy, do we have some news.
I know. We had no news. I feel like there's not been much news in general this season, which is fine for us because we're good at diving into the nitty-gritty. But then, boy, oh boy, not out of nowhere, but still somewhat surprising, the news that Nick DeVries has lost his seat at AlphaTauri and everyone's favorite man down under, Danny Ricciardo, is taking the place at HRT, back where it all started for Daniel. He's once again back in the seat here. So there's a lot to unpack about this. There was rumors in the Dutch media sort of for the past week or so that it was happening. We obviously talked about it over the past couple of weeks. Helmut Marko has been vocally irritated by Nick's lack of pace. There's a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of questions within the general F1 community about whether or not this is an overly harsh early cut for a team which is known for doing these types of things. People like Alexander Albon, Pierre Gasly, plenty of drivers who were axed, and also the mid-season swap is something that seems to be popular with them too. So I guess let's go talk about Nick first of all. So there's been a lot of reporting about this from various outlets, and I've been sort of rummaging through them all and trying to get an idea of both sides of this equation. First of all, when it came to Nick, apparently within AlphaTauri there was a lot of frustration because unlike other drivers, he is a Formula 2 winner. He is a Formula E champion of both. There was a real feeling that he was going to come in, hit the ground running, and was going to be able to perform at a high, ceiling, I guess, right away.
Especially after he filled in for Williams.
Exactly.
And scored points.
Last year at Monza, I want to say. Terrific for them. Yes, when Alex was ill, and there was a big fight for him. You know what I mean? Like they had to fend off Alpine and so I think McLaren maybe as well. I forget what the other team was. To secure his position as well. So he's been seen as that. He doesn't like being called a rookie because he's in his late 20s and he has a lot of open wheel experience and Formula experience. But that seems to have been the case. Obviously, this year he has been outperformed by Yuki. I think in every race but 2, I want to say. There has been some luck on Tsunoda's part, but in general, he has been. The other issue here is that the car is crap, right? Like it's just a bad car this year. So I feel like we'll be having a different conversation about Nick DeVries in 6 months' time if Danny Ricciardo.
Well, especially, I maintain his most embarrassing moments have been where, the amateur's braking decisions. How could he just run into the back of Lando? But Yuki's on the radio every other race being like, this car can't brake. Are you trying to kill me? I feel like when the driver who you're using as the measuring stick to say DeVries isn't cutting it, and the guy who is cutting it is saying the car doesn't stop when I want it to stop, or it doesn't stop the way I want it to. I think it's really crummy the way that DeVries, if you take away the moments where DeVries has missed a braking spot, I think he's having a fairly anonymous season, but
right.
Boy, this car feels like it's just a lead anchor tied around his feet.
So we knew that there was a chance that if he kind of had this month to prove himself, and with the summer break coming up, that that would be his last chance. He's had a rotten 2 races, so I think they're making the decision early. The other factor with this is there's obviously no point in emptying the seat unless they have somebody they can put in on the other end. And Danny Ricciardo made the decision last year, which some may have sort of, fairly, I think astutely said was a naive decision to not take up, racing in any other discipline, but to sort of stick around and be effectively the sim driver for Red Bull. Obviously, this has now paid off in spades because he has taken this seat. Apparently, there was a bit of trepidation from the Ricciardo camp. He would have preferred to have started next year. This is for two reasons. One, he would have had a proper preseason to sort of physically get up to spec. Apparently, he has been working very diligently as with his new role at Red Bull, but it's not one that requires him to do a lot of training. So that was one problem. And then the other thing is that next year is the year where Red Bull are sort of adopting this new philosophy when it comes to AlphaTauri. They're going to be working a lot more with them and using them as less as a second team and more as a junior team, where they are sharing technology, working with them on aero, all that sort of stuff. So Daniel being already sort of in the works on the main team, that would put him in a great position to try and guide that transition from a driver's perspective with AlphaTauri, if that's even what the team is going to be called next year. So that was his preference, but waiting in the wings this entire time is Liam Lawson, who's over at Super Formula, Red Bull academy driver. And the chances are that if Ricciardo hadn't taken it, obviously someone else has to take it. And then if Liam Lawson has a good season, then that suddenly becomes a question that they have to answer, and not one that Ricciardo is answering for them. The sort of third element to this, and there's not much, I don't have much to report on when it comes to this, but there is the question of Sergio Perez in this entire thing. Red Bull are running away with the Constructors' Championship. Perez is in second, even though he has now 6 races in a row, is it? Not gotten into Q.
It feels like a lot.
It's more common than not now, I think. So there is a question about, we might have a real problem when it comes to the Red Bull family bench come December.
This is the thing. Like I was thinking about this when this news broke, after saying a brief prayer in gratitude that the news broke Tuesday morning and not like at dawn on Wednesday, after just expressing my gratitude to the universe that it went that way for a change. I was thinking about, it feels like their pipeline has never fully recovered from the fact that they thought Kvyat might be the guy. That didn't work out at all. Gave him the hook, and then rushed Max up because they were confident they had a winning ticket with Max, and they, like, everything was sort of like oriented around, get Max in there, see what he can do, and then we will back him to the hilt during his breaking in period. And then nothing else quite worked, in part because, like, Max was, I think we can now see a little more clearly, Max was deceptively good, which made it hard to compare other drivers against him. But the other thing, you revisit the Albon situation, and to say nothing of Gasly, but you revisit the Albon situation, and they didn't give him a lot of leash. And really, if Hamilton doesn't take him out in 2 or 3 races, things go really, really differently for Albon as well. But they pulled the plug on that, and they wanted a steady hand with Sergio, and now that steady hand looks really unsteady, and they depleted 2 harvests worth of their development program, in that whole changeover, kicking off the Max era, and then Ricciardo leaving in a huff rather than sticking it out. So it kind of feels like they're still dealing with the knock-on effects of, they burned through a bunch of people trying to stabilize their lineup, around Max. And now the cupboard is bare. You've got Sergio, who apparently, having had a sniff of a championship, was overcome by it. It's just laid out now, and seems to be in really dire straits when it comes to form. De Vries didn't really pan out. I'm not sure Tsunoda is someone that you've got the most confidence in overall. And so they've got a bit of a problem here. And Ricciardo, it's very funny that this is how it goes, that Ricciardo's back, and he might be being used as a stalking horse to keep Sergio on his toes. I don't know.
I think
it's a mess.
I think that's exactly, at least that's how I read it initially, is like the De Vries thing is a non-factor. Really what Red Bull has is a Perez problem. And to put, if their designs are really to put Ricciardo back in that second seat next to Max, they want to have him get back up to speed, get back in a car, see what he can do. Apparently the reason it broke Tuesday morning for us was that they had at Silverstone a test in Red Bulls. I think it was a tire test, but Daniel Ricciardo, as the third Red Bull driver, drove the current Red Bull car around, and then everyone was like, okay, yeah, his times look great.
Wow.
Let's sign these papers. But yeah, I think if you to put him in the best position to take over for Sergio, this is what you do. And the person to go is De Vries. I think if like Sergio turns it around, maybe they think again and let Daniel stay in that car another year. And if they really want to get Lawson in, then they boot Yuki.
That's a fair way of putting it, because in a way it does feel like we're already, Rob was saying during the race that like no one's catching Red Bull, right? We are at the stage where folks are, thinking about next year, and it's a fallow year.
But they're
for
thinking about next year.
AlphaTauri. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, AlphaTauri aren't like, I don't know, they're not scrapping for points at the moment. I think there's too much of a shift happening next year. So that you raise a good point that like maybe this is a sort of strategic thing that has more to do with the main team than it does AlphaTauri.
But like, there's a part of me that looks at this still and says, Red Bull's not zero tolerance, but they're very abrupt with whether or not they're going to stick with the driver. They're very quick to decide whether this is going to work out. And I do think when you look at the drivers they've let walk over the years, like we've been talking, like, look, in Williams, it's not going to be the most like earth-shattering year that you're going to see from Albon, but like he looks good. He is driving the hell out of that Williams. He is looking like a number one driver, and they let him walk. Sainz was one of theirs for a number of years, right? Mm-hmm. And they couldn't keep him. They couldn't keep him in the family. Pierre Gasly, was looking terrific for a few years there at Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, and they I think Marco was very frank about, we don't have anywhere to promote you, so you should go find other options. And here we are with maybe they've got another winning ticket in their young driver program, but in the meantime they've stumbled into a situation I wouldn't have seen it coming either, that Sergio would be such a non-entity in the car this year. Didn't think that would happen. AlphaTauri, it's tough to gauge with the shittiness of this car, but at the same time, if it's tough to gauge, is Red Bull can we be confident that Red Bull's not perpetuating sort of a culture of taking drivers out back and shooting them like one of Christian's horses before you actually have done a full evaluation?
The one thing that makes me feel a little bit sort of that doesn't fit the sort of the playbook here is they have been fairly kind about Yuki.
It's weird.
He moved to Italy. He's committed.
Is this part of it too? Is like, if they like you, they will just be ride or die for you. Like, apparently they feel this way about Danny. Like, they brought him back, and I thought this was a ridiculous, like, he's gonna be our third driver, welcome back to the fold, and that was weird to begin with. And then they're like, it's good to have you back in form, Daniel. Take that kid's seat from him, okay?
Right.
And like, so he's back now too, and the fact that he left them in lurch, all is forgiven. And so there's kind of this weird thing of like, is for whatever reason Tsunoda, the chemistry just there where they're like, we believe in Yuki in a way that they didn't believe in Albon, or they didn't believe in De Vries. And that's the other weird part of it is Red Bull's always been kind of a character driven outfit, and I think there are evaluations being made that are about fit beyond performance.
It's funny. I wonder if there's any change with the mentality, because obviously when we looked at a lot of those drivers, I don't know, like, I don't think anyone thought that Yuki Tsunoda or Nick de Vries were like gunning for a Red Bull seat. But like there was a time when AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso was very much that, whereas like that's where that they're coming. And now we're in a situation where the driver who's nipping at Sergio Perez's heels is actually like an elder statesman who's playing for the little kids team for you know, it does expose, I think, like Rob was saying, a weakness in the on the bench. And I do wonder if Liam Lawson ends up taking one of those spots for sure, or you know, do we have a full new team next year? Because it's not like you can't blame this year on Yuki, but also, you know, this will be his third season. Third season.
I think he will have done 3.
This is 3. I think this is season 3.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of big changes at teams, Rob, what's going on with Alpine?
So just a quick update. When I saw the headline, I thought this sounds pretty dire, and maybe it still does. Alpine has restructured a bit. Otmar Safnauer is still team principal, but there is now an intermediary layer between him and Laurent Rossi. He reports into a VP of Motorsports, Bruno Famin. And the way they explained it, Famin, I forget what his background is, but he's all motorsports hand, more familiar with the industry than Rossi, which may not be saying much. But you know, the explanation he gave was sort of a full vote of confidence for Otmar. He said the change has nothing to do with the current situation with the F1 team. It has to do with the brand itself and the ambitious goals we have in terms of developing the brand, in terms of new products, road cars, and in terms of new territories. Now, that sort of holds up, that the Alpine mark is something that Renault wants to promote as a luxury performance brand. And they are doing that through a few other motorsports series. But at the same time, given the weird vibes around Alpine and the fact that Laurent Rossi just a few weeks ago was talking about how the team was an embarrassment and things needed to change. Look, if I'm Otmar Safnauer and suddenly I'm not talking to the boss, I'm talking to a new guy that I report into at a position that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. I don't know. I'm probably not extending my lease on my place. I'm probably, starting to put feelers out.
Yeah. Well, this kind of stuff I think takes a long time to sort of bear out, but definitely something to keep in mind. I, by the way, have been really interested in all the Williams stuff. I've been watching all the Val's verdicts.
Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating watching them being so open with the way that they're approaching kind of restructuring their team. I don't know. It's as a connoisseur of Williams, I think I'm really enjoying it.
Are the Val's verdicts?
Just quickly, speaking of fun YouTube videos that are F1 adjacent, did you guys watch any of the F1 Academy stuff from Monza?
I haven't yet.
There was a lot of crashes on turn 1. You know, they do like 3 races. Right. Yeah. Link it in the show notes. It's there was one pretty horrific one right at the start, which had a halo saving incident, but it was a bit of a sloppy weekend. There was some good racing, but there was a lot of contact, a lot of unforced sort of coming togethers. It was a little bit more Mad Max than I think they'd like to see. But 3 races to watch as well if you want to catch the highlights on F1's YouTube. All
right, yeah, I'll link it. All right, well, speaking of sloppiness, I guess, sloppy weather. So after Spa 2021, which was the race that wasn't, because it got rained out, it was put forth that maybe F1 cars should have what they're calling mud guards, something on the cars to corral some of the spray. Because really, as we've mentioned, I think in the last episode, we were talking about the death of Formula Regional driver Delano Vanthoff at Spa recently. The problem isn't so much the water, it's the fact that these rain tires are so efficient at kicking water on the track into the air that it creates basically a fog bank that makes it nearly impossible to see. And so they're thinking, again, that has only brought focus to this, that accident. They were thinking about doing this all the way as a result of 2021 Spa race. But they're going to try it this week in Silverstone. As we said, there's some tests that are happening. They're going to soak the Wellington Straight artificially. Bernie would love it. And then try out these new mudguard flaps to try and corral some of that and see if it works. This is like pretty much in this Autosport article, at least, universally praised by drivers here, because not only for Vanthoff's accident, but just they're all tired of, just foot to the floor. I hope someone doesn't spin out.
Yeah, that's fair. I was watching the NASCAR race over the weekend as well, and it was the first time I saw what happened when rain happens on NASCAR. They just stop the race. They just don't let them drive. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because these cars would not operate at all in the rain and slide all over the place.
The Car 56 proves that's not true. The Le Mans NASCAR did oval? Just fine.
Maybe, but
Skill
also
issue.
One of the things that I noticed was that whenever the spinouts do happen, they're all really good at getting out of the way. Like it's difficult because they don't want to spin out themselves. But when there's spray in the way, it does create. It makes it impossible. And then you have the nightmare where a car hits somebody bow to stern. It's just like that's what we don't want.
So is the idea that these things are going to, where are they going to sit? Is going to be like a little arch over the wheel where you're kind of enclosing your open wheel a bit?
Yeah, they refer to them as arches or mud guards, and so I don't know whether they'll just be like an extension of the existing fairings that are over the front wheels at least, and I don't know whether they will only be put on if it's a wet race.
There's also got to be like an aero thing there. Like, are the teams going to make it themselves, or is this going to be like a stock part? It couldn't be, presumably. Maybe it is.
I don't know.
I mean, there's probably a couple ways you can go about it, right? Like, I think the big question is if it's going to be a permanent install, and they're not like deciding that it will only go on if you declare a wet race, which I think you're going to have to, because the thing you can't have is in those changeable conditions. You can't have it that they don't have the thing attached to the car.
You're right.
That's going to tamp down the spray. So it's gonna be a permanent part. I think it's gonna be going the same direction as like IndyCar design and Formula E design, where it's like the open wheel thing is going to become more and more notional. When we talk about open wheel single seat, it's going to be a car with a centerline cockpit.
Yeah.
And like fore and aft aerodynamic elements. But the direction of all these things is to enclose the wheels more and more. And also be fair, like, you can see in Formula E and in IndyCar, doing that makes them able to jostle each other a little bit more and makes for slightly more dynamic racing. So I think like Formula One is going to get there. Like the long-term arc of these things is going to be the cockpits are going to be increasingly enclosed and the tires are too.
Well, speaking of car changes, Rob, what's going on with 2026?
Well, there's a lot of things. Like right now, it's funny that the 2026 engine regulations took a long time to hammer out, and now that they have some technical simulation data coming back, you're starting to see some hand wringing about it. Plus, there are some new things that are coming into play for how they're going to make the new engine regs work. So the big thing is that I don't know what the current ratio is. You can correct me on this, Drew, but like the big thing in 2026 is the car's going to be half running on battery and half on internal combustion. And so that means that the energy recovery is going to have to be on point. The battery is going to have to be bigger. And one of the things that you highlighted in your news clippings for this week is that they're bringing back what's being called fuel burn, effectively, where you're kind of over revving the engine, I guess, to put a little bit of extra torque through to charge up the battery.
Right, because the other thing that's happening is that they're getting rid of the MGU-H.
Oh,
so
they
currently,
are.
the way that cars recover energy from the car and put it into the battery is two ways. The MGU-K, which is kinetic, so when you hit the brakes, it'll use some of that. There's a flywheel, basically, that recharges the battery. And the MGU-H for heat, which takes wastegate energy from the engine and converts that somehow, magic, I think, into battery juice. The MGU-H is apparently really expensive and tricky.
Inefficient.
Teams have effectively solved it now, but it took a long time. We used to see MGU-H failures all the time.
Right, yeah.
But it's expensive, it's complicated, and so they're getting rid of it. They're just doing MGU-K. But you're right, Rob, because of this deficit now that there is between, there is now not enough kinetic energy to refill half of your juice, with just kinetic energy. And so to do that, you now have to expend horsepower to pump the drive shaft when you don't need it to juice up your battery.
So let me get this straight, because I'm no scientist. So to make the cars more energy efficient and eco-friendly, we're going to burn gasoline.
So,
Kind of.
Drew, I'll let you take it.
Well, Danny, we have a special sustainable gasoline.
Oh,
just
sorry.
for you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Where's this from? Do we harvest it from corals in the Mariana Trench? Where did they find this?
I don't know yet. So
Okay.
I'm sure Aramco is working hard on it.
So, God,
Peanut butter
this
oil.
is a major topic that is going to this is hugely important for the auto industry, and there's a
Yes.
few things that are going to be. I'm really curious to see how they play out, because I used to roll my eyes at it, and now I'm not so sure it's as silly as it sounds.
Ooh.
When we talk about carbon in the atmosphere, not all carbon is created equal. The CO2 released by the airline industry is worse than the CO2 released by cars, right? Like, CO2 at the ground level is very easy to sort of capture and recycle into the carbon cycle. Stuff distributed in the high atmosphere, really hard to recover and bring down. So there's an argument, a school of thought, that if you can create carbon cycle neutral biofuels and synthetics, that you are not actively contributing to increasing carbon dioxide levels and global warming. Now, everyone and their brother has a reason to say this, right? Like, this is the eat all you want. It's low fat. Like, there's absolutely that element to this. Porsche has invested a ton in this research. I think they created a massive facility in South America that's going to be working on producing, refining these fuels, because the entire value proposition of Porsches, for instance, is that they hold on to their value and they resell really, really well. If everyone decides we can't have internal combustion cars on the road at all in the next 10, 15 years, then no one's going to want to buy current internal combustion engine cars. That aftermarket collapses. It's a bad scene. So there's a lot of reasons for people to want this to work. F1 is getting with that program, but also is this maybe just kind of a sop to an industry, to a sport that's always been captured by oil industry interests? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. The thing I will say though about this fuel burn thing, gas engines are kind of inherently inefficient, and it does make some intuitive sense that the marginal inefficiency of revving up a drive shaft a little harder than you need to wind up a battery ends up being more efficient overall. That does make some intuitive sense to me. But it is odd. to the point of this oddness, like this is where we're starting to see people complaining about the new regs. Max and Christian Horner have both talked about how they think the 2026 regs are going to be terrible. Horner's been talking about how the 50-50 battery to internal combustion power ratio is going to be terrible, and cars are effectively going to have to be slowing down to charge mid-lap. That, you know, every race would kind of look like we saw a lot of laps at Silverstone. I know, don't threaten me with a good time. But there's a so that is the Red Bull position. As you would expect, the minute Horner's taken a position, Wolf has immediately jumped in front of the nearest microphone to say that this is Red Bull trying to protect what is undeniably an immature engine development program, and that they are trying to basically throw sand in the gears of, again, a set of technical rules that was designed to bring in people like Audi who have come in. Like, are these things road relevant? This is another reason why the MGUH is gone. It's not industry relevant. You know, the future of energy recovery for EVs is going to be, there's no heat coming off an internal combustion engine, so it's just not useful for what they're talking about. So Wolf's position is, you can't rock this boat. It was too hard getting here, and there's no way anyone is going to want to reopen this can of worms. Fred Vasseur, I think, kind of gave the most measured response to it, which is, what are we talking about? It's so early. Like, we haven't developed the engines. We need to see how this plays out. Like, it's absurd to talk about we know what the racing is going to be like in 2026. Like, no, we don't. And that's probably correct, right? There's a degree of posturing in all this, but there is a lot of anxiety around the engine revamp because the stakes are so high.
Well, we know how the racing is going right now. 2023 driver standings look like this. Max Verstappen is on top of the 255 points to Sergio Perez's 156. Fernando Alonso is in third still with 137 points. Lewis Hamilton in fourth with 121. Then we've got a close battle between Carlos Sainz in fifth with 83 and George Russell in sixth with 82. A little further back, Charles Leclerc in seventh, and then a big jump down to Lance Stroll in eighth. Stroll has 44. Leclerc has 74. Lando Norris has 42, aided a lot by that second place podium. Esteban Ocon is in 10th with 31. Oscar Piastri in 11th now with 17 points. Pierre Gasly's in 12th with 16. Alex Albon in 13th with 11 points. Nico Hulkenberg's in 14th with 9. Valtteri Bottas in 15th with 5. Zhou Guanyu has 4. Yuki Tsunoda and Kevin Magnussen both have 2. And Logan Sargent and Nick De Vries, who will end his Formula One career, ? With 0. Constructor standings, Red Bull Racing is on top, of course, with 411 points. Mercedes is in second with 203. Aston Martin in third with 181. Ferrari in fourth with 157. Then we've got McLaren in fifth. Welcome to the fifth place. 59 points for McLaren. Alpine's in sixth with 47. Williams is in seventh with 11, tied with Gino's and team now. Tied for seventh, Williams. Alfa Romeo's in ninth with 9 points, and Alpha Tauri in 10th with 2. If you'd like to join the standings yourself, you can do so in our Formula One F1 fantasy.formula1.com league using the link in the show notes. From the British Grand Prix, the podium looks like this. In third place, Nosh on Sweets from the Shift+F1 podcast league.
Terrific.
In second, Do Russell Powered. And in first place, The Plugs Don't Stop, Remap Radio Forever.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Dominant plugs. Great plug game.
But overall, the standings look like this. In third place, Oberhof Racing. Second place, Paying the Stroll Toll. And number 1, Understeer McBride.
I understood that reference. It was good. Good names.
Very good.
Good job, everyone.
If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. Next one, we'll actually be able to read emails.
Yeah.
There won't be a race.
Hooray.
There will be a race and not one to talk about. You can also hit us up on the socials. We're not on Threads yet. Should we get on Threads?
Did we have an Instagram account we can convert over?
We don't.
We didn't? No.
Don't want to start one.
If we did have an Instagram account, it would literally just be pictures of Pastor Maldonado anyway. So,
Yeah. How many of those are out there? We'd have to go get our own.
Yeah.
To hire someone with a telephoto lens.
Speaking of pictures of people, I'm very
upset.
Sorry, Rob. I was so upset I needed to talk over you about the fact that they had a certain Haas team principal looking at memes, looking at pictures of memes, and the most important meme of them all, he didn't go for. What an absolute missed opportunity. I was blinking at my screen.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, outrageous.
Dead to me. Well, that's us around the internet. Do you want to take us around the world of
I
racing?
sure do. Let's race around the way. Yeah.
The Goodwood Festival of Speed is kicking off Thursday of this week. If you are unfamiliar, you watch a whole bunch of weird cars go up their little course somewhere in Britain that's just flanked by hay bales.
Good stuff.
It is this weird like throwback, but also here's this car that's never been seen before going 1,000 miles an hour past these spectators. It's really wild.
It's really good. Get some wood.
It's really good. They stream it online. Check it out. The World Superbike Championship is at Autodromo Enzo Dino Ferrari, Imola. Maybe you know it for their Italian round. Formula E is also in Italy in Rome.
The Rome Prix.
At the Circuito Cittadino dell'Ur. The E-Prix di Roma.
Just around the Colosseum. Very bumpy.
Yeah, sure. They already got a track. Do you like the NASCAR Coliseum? They did the LA Coliseum. They turned that into a NASCAR track.
Did they really?
They really did.
Cool.
Bubba Wallace is arrested at the Coliseum for doing donuts inside. Don't you know it's 2,000 years old?
The NASCAR Xfinity Series is in Loudon, New Hampshire at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway for the Am Better Health 200.
Love that one. It's one of my favorite ones. It's going to get loud and Loudon.
My health Am Better.
I'm better. I was feeling
Loudon,
sick, but now I'm feeling I'm better.
But now I'm better. The Motocross Grand Prix is at Locket in the Czech Republic.
Lock it.
Check it out. Lock it up.
Pop it. Pop it and lock it.
Let's see. Super Formula is at the Fuji. I almost said the Fiji Speedway. They're not that far afield. Which is in Oyamacho, Suntogun, Shizuoka-ken.
Oh.
Which is the prefecture.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. We have the IndyCar, the NXT. No, I'm sorry, not the NXT. The what is their sponsor? NTT, IndyCar Series.
Yes.
In Toronto for the Honda Indy Toronto race.
Nice and clean. I like it.
And we got NASCAR.
Are we feeling bad, or I'm better?
We're feeling New Englandish.
Ooh.
We're also at Loudon, New Hampshire, for the Crayon 301.
The crayon. You mean like the little pens my kid uses?
Yep.
Literally,
Yep.
that's
or
what's
if you're
that's what's sponsoring the NASCAR crayon.
so yeah, I think so. If you're if you say things different, you might say Crown 300, 301.
Is it? I'm breaking kayfabe here. Is it actually the crayon? It's crayon. Crayon.
Crayon. I believe it's a company. Don't know what they do.
Oh, it's Cloud Technologies. I thought it was the I thought it was the pens, which can
Crayola.
Crayola.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Crayola is the name of that company.
Could you imagine the liveries?
Well, I was
so good.
That would have been great, exactly. And what I was thinking of was how do you remember when we went to the NASCAR in Sonoma? The kids area was like not much of a kids area. It was like a car they could play in, and then a table with some crayons. So, yeah, makes sense. Cloud computing. Why not?
Who says crowns? Where are the crown people from?
Somewhere in America, is it? It's like a Boston
It
thing or
must be.
something.
Is it New Hampshire? Maybe.
Wait,
maybe
like
it is the
saying
crown.
crayon like crown?
Yes, they pronounce it crown.
Crown.
Thing. No.
Southern?
People
Oh,
say
yeah.
crayon.
Sure, I'd accept crayon.
Crayon.
Crayon. That's how I said it when I was growing up. Crayon.
Sure,
Playing with
I
your
think crayon.
crayons.
sure. Well, that's what's happening this weekend, Danny. What happened in Days of Yore?
Oh God, I was like, I forgot about the book for a second, and I was like, was there a news article I have not done research for? God, Days of
Crack
Yore.
open the good book, Danny.
Are we talking
Yes.
about the Colosseum again? On this day, July 12th, in Days of Yore, that's the name of this section. After some success in motorbike racing and a slow start to his career on four wheels, by the early 90s, Damon Hill was beginning to find his feet and managed to get an F1 drive with the moribund Brom team. Today in 1992 at the British Grand Prix, Hill started his first Grand Prix, having managed to qualify in the uncompetitive Brom for the first time. He finished 16th, 4 laps down on the leaders.
Okay.
4 laps down. That's not fun. Martin Brundle summoned up the British GP. Excuse me. Martin Brundle summed up the British Grand Prix at Silverstone on this day in 1998 with the words, "This is as bizarre as I've ever seen a finish to a Grand Prix." I'm going to stop for a second. Anyone know what this is?
98?
Yeah.
No.
Michael Schumacher had been leading in his Ferrari when he was given a stop-go penalty in the closing laps. It looked like victory was gone, but Michael came in on the last lap to take his penalty, thereby crossing the finish line in the pits to win the race. Confusion reigned, and Murray Walker could only say, "I'm pretty sure that Michael Schumacher has won the British Grand Prix." Infamous scenes at Silverstone. Yeah. Good ones.
Wow.
If there was a boundary to test, that man
Yes.
was going to test it.
I believe there is a rule in place after that exact incident.
Hey, if it's not in the rule book,
Yeah.
it ain't breaking the rules. All right. Well, final thoughts after this British Grand Prix, Danny.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend. Once again, mixed rain, mixed conditions, mixed weather. Actually added maybe a bit more spice to the weekend. But honestly, I'm just excited to see Daniel Ricciardo in an AlphaTauri. I think I'm sorry. I'm sad for Nick de Vries. I think he has, he's not the first person to, come under that particular guillotine, but
He knew what he was signing up for when he signed that Red Bull contract.
He got stoffled.
He did.
He sure did.
He got Marcoed. The Helmut Marko finishing school does not.
Low key,
you can get kicked out.
The villain of all the story, I think, sometimes might be Helmut, because it's like Christian and Adrian run the racing program, dude. Like, what are you bringing to this party here? But yeah, that's
chaos.
Yeah. Helmut Marko is like the hangman. He just comes in and like he does the dirty work. I wonder if that's he's like the fall guy because he doesn't care.
He likes playing Squid Game with like 20-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. I guess you didn't throw me. I'm just going to do the closing thoughts here thing. Yeah, we got to stop Martin from doing the grid walk. It's time. It's over. We have to. We had a good time, but I think we all need to accept the fact that, one, for a guy who allegedly hates it, he sure makes it somehow more awkward and weird and worse every time he goes out. This entire Cara Delevingne thing was bizarre
I didn't see
this weekend. So once again, there was a celebrity on the grid, Cara Delevingne, Carnival Row Zone, and Brundle went up to talk to her and was waved off she was there at the behest of Alfa Romeo.
Okay.
Was waved off by their PR. Ignored the PR and then went up to Delevingne and started asking her questions. She was like, "Sorry, not taking questions." And Then he kind of gets into it with the PR, and then as he walks away, he's kind of weirdly snide about like, well, I'm sure it would have been a fascinating conversation. But also to the PR, he's like, well, the rule is everyone talks on the grid, which is not the rule. This is not like being on an F1 grid does not mean that Martin Brundle has right to demand a conversation.
They don't stick the
with
microphone
you.
in the driver's faces when they're in the car or walking. Yeah.
It's just weird. But then every time he does it, you have a weird toxic fan discourse. That's the other part of it is like clockwork, come Sunday night, Monday morning, there is all these people think they're too good for the sport. If they want to come to the races, they need to show respect to the sport. And it's like, man, he's a little British man with a microphone running up on you. Like,
is Sky the sport?
They think they do. I get massive.
Yeah, I know they do.
Yeah, I get massive big time energy from those dudes. Like Crofty, Brundle, huge. But I don't think they are, no.
No, it's funny. I would even say in the UK, if you had a BBC, although maybe not at the moment, because they interviewed me, now it's just BBC's reputation's tanked. No, but at the moment there is a weird thing going on with the BBC and something the Sun reported on. It's whatever. I'm not going to get into it here. But in general, I would always have thought that the BBC, on the microphone would have produced a bit more of a respectful response, perhaps. But yeah, I haven't watched them in a long time. I haven't watched any of the track walks in a long time. Yeah, I don't.
Why?
It's like watching IRL Twitch streamers. You know what I mean? Like just walking around.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's like I don't need that.
And it's excruciating energy. Like there are people who love the awkwardness that it genuinely is funny to watch Brundle, who has no talent for this, misidentifying people and randomly going up to people to demand questions. But like, it's a rough watch, even at the most charitable.
What does Cardell even have to say about F1? Like, just leave her alone. Like, she's here for a good time. She's not going to let us know if Ferrari's tire strategy has been on point this year. You know what I mean? It's just
Formula One gets the prestige just by showing these people. You don't need to talk to them. If anything, that undercuts your brand.
And it's like, again, he went up to Megan Thee Stallion and was like, "Do you have a rap for us?" Like,
oh my God, did he? I'm just like out of the loop on the Martin Brundle.
Oh yeah, man.
Right. So like between the Chinaman thing, like. The guy needs to be given the hook, and like he's decent in the booth. Let's keep him there. But this weird confrontational thing he's doing around the grid walks is no good. It's a bad vibe. It makes him look worse. And as we start the second part of the American leg, like it's just a matter of time before he pulls the shit with Taylor and gets killed. Probably literally.
I do feel like in his defense, or maybe in F1's defense, there was a time when the track walk was just about the only time we had any personality happening in and around the race. F1's not there anymore. F1 is like loads of access, loads of driver time, loads of discourse around it. So its import is completely reduced. But there was, for a while there, it did add some much needed personality to a rather dry presentation. But I'm with you. I haven't watched either him or Coulthard's or anyone's in a long time because it just doesn't feel like it's relevant anymore.
I just want to go back to one thing. Rob, are you a Carnival Row fan?
I am, yes.
What is that?
Interesting.
What is it? I heard him
Interesting.
Oh, so Carnival Row is an Amazon fantasy series.
Secret Society?
But it's like a Victorian London detective series, but like fairies and satyrs are real.
Ooh.
And Orlando Bloom is like this hard-ass detective who's trying to solve Jack the Ripper style crimes, except what if Jack the Ripper were killing fairies?
Oh man, well, he's an elf. He wouldn't like that.
Yeah, and Cara Delevingne is a fairy, and she's got little wings, and like
she looks like a fairy.
Absolutely. And then turns out like when you have sex with a fairy, like all sorts of wild shit happens. Oh, wow. But also like there's good mystery stuff happening there. First season was good. Second one, little less even, but it was a fun series.
Cool.
All right. Well, if you'd like to support the show and get access to all our bonus episodes, maybe if we run out of car movies, Carnival Row
Oh my God. Wrap it up. Get out. Let's get out of here. Jesus.
You can join the official Shift F1 Discord at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We'll see you all next week.
Yum.